Welcome to Neurodivergency, where neurodivergent voices and friends turn struggle into strength. We're here to break the stigma around mental health, dive into the truth about our brains, and bring you real tools for clarity, healing, and hope. Today's guest is Amy Hyde, who is a neurodivergent wellness coach. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. So tell us a bit about you. What is your relationship to neurodivergence?
Okay, so I was diagnosed autistic probably about 13 years ago now, quite a long time. At that time, I didn't know anyone else with any kind of sort of neurodivergence at all. So it was my first reaction was like, but I'm not good at maths. And I had a lot of kind of internalized ableism and also um I've been really affected, I think, by stereotypes that were in the media, and it's taken me it's taken me a while to kind of find myself and find my place in the world. And yeah, I'm hoping to talk to you a bit about that now.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't even know there was an association between autism and math, at least as far as stereotypes go. Ah, yeah, so tell us a bit about what life was like in the difficult periods related to neurodivergence or not.
I think one of the most difficult periods was not knowing, and also kind of the mental health professionals not knowing, because I was diagnosed bipolar type 2, which they now say was not an appropriate diagnosis. And I have been put on heavy brain medication after heavy brain medication. I've been on like 30 different forms of like antidepressants, mood stabilizers, antipsychotics, the works, and none of them worked. And because they didn't work, they just thought, well, we'll just up the dose. And I had terrible side effects. I wasn't functioning well. And then when I eventually got my diagnosis, when it came about, I was able to kind of come off a lot of that medication and just understand the way I work, understood what I was struggling with, and kind of adapt my life so it would just work for me instead of trying to fit myself and force myself into a kind of world that wasn't adaptive for me and wasn't working for me. And just being able to see, actually, I'm struggling with this because I'm massively overstimulated, not because everyone else is managing. I should be managing too. And just having that kindness. I think for me, that was one of the biggest changing points and biggest struggles, was just not knowing and not being able to. If you don't know, then you can't really strategize and you can't give yourself the tools to manage.
Yeah. Yeah, and the complex thing is there's so much intersection of different mental
Mm,
health symptoms and medications from various different diagnoses that can help with
absolutely.
others. Yeah. What did it look like specifically from an experience level? What did you feel like in those times where you were misdiagnosed, over-medicated, not aware of the autism diagnosis?
Gosh, there was so much. I mean, some days I just feel like I was going to explode. I'd be at work and I just feel the whole day like there was so much pressure and it was building and building and building. And as soon as I got out of work, I kind of did explode. I'd get tics, I'd shout things out, I'd just be rocking uncontrollably. I'd be engaging in kind of self-injurious behaviors just to try and calm everything down that had been going on inside me. The medication helped. It numbed me, but then it stopped me from being able to feel joy as well. And I think that's so important, just to feel human and have that joy. I'm not against medication, by the way. I think it's really helpful and a really important tool. But for me, I think it had numbed me to the place where I actually couldn't heal. I was stuck. Um, yeah, I mean, And I think there was a lot of confusion all the time. Like, why am I not managing? Everyone else seems to be managing. Why can't I cope with this? I'm just in a crowded room. It shouldn't be a problem. And I think I became really unkind to myself. And I think, being autistic, we probably find that, there's research that shows that, people take an instant, neurotypical people take an instant dislike. And I think as well, you hear unkind words, you've got things wrong over and over again, and you reinforce that story. Well, I did. I reinforced that story to myself. I was wrong. I'm doing things wrong. I can't get anything right. And telling myself that story was incredibly toxic to me. And being able to break that and say, actually, no, you're just overstimulated. It's just a very busy room. You just need to step away. You're not wired perhaps the same as everyone else, and that's why you're different, and that's okay. In fact, that's great because you've got so many strengths.
Incredible. So you've mentioned breaking it. Tell us a bit about what does life look like now before we get into the journey of how you got there. What's a snapshot of how is your experience today?
It's very different. It's very different. I lean into the things that make me happy, my interests, my passions, and that helps. I still am incredibly sensitive to so many things, and I get overstimulated quickly, and I have difficulty being in rooms. But I find that I'm able to identify that quicker, act on that, whether that be like step away or whatever the situation may be. And I find that mm, like explosive kind of reactions to things, they still happen, life is life. But they're much further apart and I recover so much quicker. Some days I'd be at work and I'd have to spend the whole weekend in a dark room because I just could not cope, and I'd be throwing up before I went in the next day again because I was so stressed about it. Whereas now I can do a day at work. I still need to recover. I still need a bit of dark room time, but it's the length of time that it takes to recover is so much better because I'm not letting it get to the stage where it's hideous.
Incredible. And the diagnosis process, you've been able to shed some light on that. No longer the bipolar is a misdiagnosis. I'm sure different medication stack is also changing your neurochemical,
Yeah.
biochemical situation. And yeah,
Absolutely.
uh,
I still have a whole heap of mental health diagnoses. I think I'm always going to have some level of anxiety. I've never met an autistic person before that doesn't have some form of complex PTSD just because of the way life, especially if you've been undiagnosed, has affected you on the way. Even the school system, to be honest, is incredibly toxic. Um, but life is so much better. I can recognize, I mean, for me, just thinking about like mental wellness isn't like being happy all the time and being super positive. It's recognizing that kind of flow of emotions and negative and positive, and being able to bring yourself back to balance and being okay with it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Some words of wisdom in there. Imagine that I, in front of you right now, was the version of you from some years ago that was struggling, that didn't know what the reasons were, that was maybe taking that cocktail of medications and having so many outbursts and exploding and all of that. What would be, and I come we're in a conversation and I'm telling you, I can relate to this. I need help. What can I do? What would you tell me?
I think one of the first things is to listen to your body. And I think being autistic, sometimes we find that incredibly difficult. I would get confused about whether I was anxious or even just cold because like my hairs would be on end and I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. And I was just cold. And because I wasn't very good at understanding myself and my needs. So I think for the first thing is, try to learn to check in and try and work out what you want. And that might not be easy at first, but I do believe it's kind of like a muscle and you can get better at it. Also be kind to yourself. Um, because this is something we struggle with, and the world has become so much more toxic now than it ever was. We're being bombarded with stimuli on an almost global kind of way. Even like, most jobs, you've got like Teams messages, you've got emails, you've got phone calls, you've got like, there's so many ways that people contact you, your mobile even. And we take on I always took on a kind of obligation that I had to respond straight away, and I had to be on it, on it, on it, on it, on it. And it's a lot. It's an awful lot. So I think, even the strongest of us are having difficulty with it nowadays. And so just be kind, because you are dealing with a lot, and living in this world is a lot. But we've got to listen to your body, and don't take it past what it shouldn't be doing, because I know for me especially, I used to push through, I used to grind through, and it used to make me so much worse. And sometimes it's okay to take a rest, it's okay to take that time off, and it's completely okay to do things in the way that works for you, even if, I don't know, grumpy Gary sitting next to you is going, oh, you shouldn't do it like that. No, it's fine. Do what works for you. Do what feels good for you. And then when you're more comfortable, I mean, and that's another thing as well, like try and make yourself comfortable, because I tend to find when I'm more comfortable in a more sensory safe place, then everything starts to come together and things can start to move forward. And if it doesn't, at least I'm comfier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's some great tips. Um, yeah, so getting into the body, the learning curve that getting into the body and listening to the body is being more kind to yourself, and also um the the comfort thing, whether it
Yeah.
be physical, whether it be sensory, like
Mm,
noise, lighting,
exactly.
sitting position, whatever it may be, visual stimulation, etc. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big one.
that's hugely important. And actually, until we play around with all of those factors, we don't know what's contributing, because
Yeah.
we're always absorbing so much information.
Exactly. And I really strongly believe that a lot of mental health is getting you to a level where you can kind of think, you can think about the options and manage things. And the best way to do that is to collect little 0.5% of improvements everywhere, whether that's taking the light off, that improves things a little bit, but not enough. Maybe taking off the itchy jumper, maybe that will, improve things just a little bit. And just collecting those easy kind of 0.5% here and there can just lower things enough for you to actually, okay, I can start to see things now. I can see the options in front of me rather than being stuck in all the everything happening.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it really highlights the importance of that self-awareness and long-term work, as it really is about little tiny actions that keep compounding. Tiny awareness here, tiny awareness there. And then lo and behold, you find out a little bit more about who you are, what you need, and why
Yeah.
things were the way they were, and you can improve them. And that's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be afraid to experiment as well. Like if you think, oh my gosh, I'm so overstimulated, everyone tells me I need a dark room and that's not working. Maybe you do need to blast some death metal at yourself. You've got to try and experiment, see what works for you. And even if it's not what, people think should work for you, no, experiment and find it, because, things that work for me are not what don't work for other people. I remember I used to work in a crisis center, and one of my favorite things to do when I'm stressed, please don't laugh, everyone, is I like to try and work out the area of the ceiling in the room that I'm in. And I like kind of like maths it around. And I was talking to somebody else and they just looked at me as if I was crazy. And just like why would I want to do that?
Why not?
And you know, and I write down my feelings in another language that I can't speak very well, and I have the most terrible kind of grammar and stuff. But I find that like accessing that kind of creative part of my brain while also writing down my feelings is really helpful because I'm thinking, oh, what's another word I can how can I say brain? And I'll say pink jelly in my head or something, and I'll think, oh, that was a clever way of putting it. And that's not going to work for everyone, but it it helps me. So, don't be afraid to find the thing that works for you, even if other people are just like, what?
Interesting. Yeah, so can you tell us a bit about the journey that you had to go through in order to get where you are today? Let's start with maybe the major milestones that happened along the way.
Okay, so I was diagnosed quite a long time ago. When I first got the diagnosis, I had I wasn't expecting it. I didn't really know a lot about autism at all. And to be honest, I felt a lot of emotions. Part of me was like, okay, so that explains it. Um, and then other part of me thought, well, I always thought I was bipolar and that I would get better, but this is actually me as a person intrinsically. Um, and for a while, I mean, I hate to say this, but I felt a bit like I was broken before I really understood myself. And I also felt a lot of grief. Not so much for the diagnosis, but for the choices and the life that I could have had if I'd have been informed and made better choices that would have suited how I work and how I think. And that took a little what and oh yeah, not to mention a huge identity thing. If I didn't understand myself, it's ironic because I still don't fully understand myself. It's a constant learning thing, but I felt like I believed all this about myself. I believed so sure that I was bipolar. I believed that all this kind of things that I held quite deeply about myself suddenly were kind of thrown up in the air, and I'm like, oh, is this me or is this autism? Is this me or And it was a really confusing time, and I don't know what it's like where you are, but at that time they would just go, oh, great, you're not under our team anymore. Here's a leaflet. Off you go. No support. Work it out for yourself. And I had all these complex kind of emotions that I had to work through. And it takes time. It's really helpful to kind of find people who are going through a similar thing to talk to. Um, but yeah, I would say it took me about a year to even just accept it to a way because I always felt like, oh, maybe I don't relate to that trait, so maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's a mistake. I've been
To
tested twice.
accept what, the autism diagnosis?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just like, oh, but I can manage this and I don't really struggle with I can't I'm trying to think of something off the top of
Some
my head,
other
but
symptoms, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'm quite good socially, perhaps. And oh, so maybe they've got it wrong because other people might say I'm quite good. I'm always relating to other people. I was doing that so much, and I think maybe that's part of the package that you're trying to always part of the masking. You're always comparing to other people and trying to put on that mask. So yeah, it was a lot, but and it took time. It took time to kind of embed it. I found saying it out loud really, really helped. Even doing things like this and talking about it just make myself feel like a little bit more authentic, even though I completely am. It's very strange. But yeah, it was a lot at first.
Yeah.
I went to work and I disclosed to work, and my boss laughed at me and said it was the most ridiculous thing that she had ever heard. So again, this was a while back. The neurodiversity movement wasn't quite as far as it was, but that was extremely difficult, and the work that I did, they started just saying, "Oh, well, you're autistic. You can't communicate well. We're going to take away all your interaction with customers, or we're going to take this away." And they kind of took my job away until I had nothing. And at that point, I was quite vulnerable, and I kind of believed people when they told me that. Um, if I was in that situation now, it would be very different, I can tell you.
Yeah.
And
I just want to cut in to backtrack a
oh,
little bit because that's from the autism diagnosis. What was even the journey like to get to the
oh, to
autism
get to the
diagnosis?
diagnosis.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know if I mean it could be just the natural unfolding of an investigation, but I'm curious if there
Oh,
are things
sure.
that you want to share about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I was very lucky. I talk about the neurodiversity movement, like not being as far along back then. I got a the assessment really, really quickly. I think I got my diagnosis from it being suggested, and I had a diagnosis within 3 months of that, which now we're talking years. So basically, I used to overdose a lot at work, just small ones, and my psychiatrist at the time was like, Amy, this isn't normal. I used to get that a lot from my psychiatrist. This isn't normal. Why are you doing this? You should be doing that at home. Well, not you should be, but most people do that at home on a Friday night with a bottle of wine. What is this? We're going to send you to a psychologist because you're not normal. And so I went to the psychologist, and she really didn't know what to make of me for a while. But over time, she started noticing small things, like once she forgot to switch the lights on, and she had like a much better session with me. She was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And just little things along the way. And she often said that she struggled to connect with me, which I thought was a bit of a weird thing to say. I didn't know because it didn't really warm me to her. And did give me quite an othered feeling. But at one point she goes, Amy, do you know what? This might sound really weird, and I don't want to scare you or anything. And I don't, I'm not saying this thing, but I've noticed a few kind of traits that might suggest that maybe autism might be a thing. And she goes, oh, I don't know, but maybe we could just rule it out. And I was like, I'll rule out anything. I didn't
Yeah.
even to think click to myself that would be the thing, because I say I all my knowledge was based on stereotypes of like these kind of savants and young boys who were really into trains. Well, I am
Good
quite
at
into
math.
trains, but
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh yeah, whatever, let's do some more tests. And then they took me in, and I did an intelligence test, which I wasn't expecting to be part of it. And I scored really high in some areas, but my processing was like really low. So I was in the 90th percentile for memory and things like that. But processing, I was down in I can't remember, it was like 22nd percentile, something really, really quite low down.
Interesting spread, yeah.
Yeah. And they said, oh, that could be for a few reasons. You could be really fastidious and like across, or, you could be slower at processing. Probably bit of column A, bit of column B. And then at the end of that, they did some like basic screening questionnaires. So I did those, and they came back and they said that I scored really highly, and then they sent me off to the big assessment with like a couple of psychiatrists and a learning disabilities nurse and a big panel, which was terrifying. And it was a really weird thing because I went in and I was like, I didn't know if I related to the diet. I didn't know if I wanted it. I didn't know. And then I became super like aware, like, oh, am I moving too much in my chair? Is that giving them clues? Am I thinking about it and doing it more? And now I'm suggesting it even more to them. And yeah, and they asked me like questions about like interest. They asked me questions that I didn't understand. They asked me this weird kind of filing cabinet question about how I thought, and I was just like, I don't have a filing cabinet in my head. What are you on about? And then my husband at the time thankfully came where he goes, no, no, what they mean is, do you think in this way? And I was like, oh gosh, I'm so glad you're here, because I'd have just gone, nope, 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 nope. um and then after that they brought me back and gave me an autism diagnosis, um and then said, well, therefore you're probably not under our mental health services anymore, so we'll discharge you here, see you later, have a leaflet, off you go. And
Wow.
yeah, how it came to be.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, sounds like a lot of different little hints and factors along the way and
Mm,
suggestions of what um hypotheses to explore, which then actually led to the insights. And
yeah,
yeah, then please do continue. Since the diagnosis, then what else has helped you get to where you're at now?
absolutely. So after that big kind of flurry of emotions after being diagnosed, I then started to learn about myself, I guess, and
Oh
learn
yeah.
what things I struggle with, and what things I have control over, and what things I don't have control over. You know, I don't, if I go into a busy space, I can always walk out, and giving myself the ability, that's the wrong word, permission to do that was very powerful. Um, just learning that I'm beginning to feel stressed, I'll switch the lights off. I will get myself something kind of heavy, or I'll push my fingers back, because that always helps me. I don't know. I also wear a hat when I'm stressed, because I find the pressure on my head kind of helps bring me down. Um, I have a pair of very ugly sunglasses that that I have in my pocket a lot of the time and at work, and I can always just put them on if I'm struggling. And understanding what was going wrong allowed me to work out strategies to handle it. I began to kind of learn, kind of to work out how I was feeling, and incorporating the body into that, so I could have a strategy on how to manage that as well. And if I start to feel this tightness, maybe that's an indicator that this environment's not good for me, and that I should move or do something different. um I I really started to lean into the things that brought me joy. I can't tell you what a difference that made to my mental health. Things I was told were childish before, or, silly. And, they probably are, but it doesn't matter. It brings me happiness and brings me into balance. And I think that's something else as well. Balance is so important. I feel like, I don't know, you can agree or disagree. I feel like autism, quite often it's that spiky profile, people of extremes, and I'm quite often hyper, or I'm always in a kind of strong place. I'm overstimulated or I'm understimulated, and it's just trying to edge up, find those little half percents that I was talking earlier, to try and find a bit of balance, to kind of bring me back to a comfortable place, because I am a sensitive person. I'm sensitive to the environment. I'm sensitive to kind of medications. I'm sensitive to so many different things, and being aware of that, thinking, am I veering too much to the edge? Do I need to bring it back? And finding those strategies to do it. Um, finding people as well, finding people that understand me, finding your tribe, as they say. I feel that that's so important. Um, I often say, sorry if I'm going on, but like being autistic is like being in a foreign country, and then when I meet another autistic person, it's like I speak their language and it just feels natural and comfortable, whereas with other people I'm almost translating in my head a bit, translating, oh, do I
Yeah.
want to do this, do I want to lift my voice like that? And then when you meet someone else autistic, it just it feels it feels like, oh yeah, I'm home.
It clicks, yeah. Yeah,
um
that's a really incredible thing to look out for. You know, if we don't know whether we are autistic or not, just having others as a reference point could be something that gives a really good clue.
Yeah, I think that's why we're so good at spotting each other, and also, I've definitely got an ADR, just kind of like, but yeah, and I guess unmasking is really important as well. And that's so easy
Unmasking.
to do with other autistic people. That kind of facade you put on to try and fit in all the time, which is absolutely exhausting. When I'm in a meeting jobs, I would always like thinking, oh, how should I do my voice? Should I raise it up a bit here? Should I be smiling a bit more here? How do I want to move my hands? How do I want to move myself? Like I'm constantly thinking about that, to try and like blend in. And that is so exhausting. I think it's difficult because there's a reason why people mask, and that's a safety thing. And everyone, neurotypical, autistic, allistic, I probably should say rather than neurotypical, um, we all do it to an extent to fit in for safety reasons. So
What was that term that you said?
allistic, it means non-autistic, because neurotypical, that
I
that
see.
that that spans a whole lot of things.
Yeah,
Neurodivergence, as you know, takes
yeah.
so many different things,
That's
so it's a
labels.
bit of
Yeah.
a
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, everybody masks. I think
mm,
neurotypical is not wrong
yeah.
either. You know, we do this out of self-protection.
Absolutely.
Uh, we're conditioned by society. We're social creatures,
Mm.
and so there is a space for masking. But yeah, maybe in an ideal world, there are no masks and everybody loves each other for who they are,
Yeah,
how they are, authentically. But this is not the world that we
absolutely.
currently live in. And if we want to survive in the world that we currently live in, then it's
It's for a
useful and
place.
necessary to mask
Mm.
and to learn that. So we learn it unconsciously. We don't go to masking class and
No, no,
and
absolutely.
do it consciously. We absorb it because it's the way to be. But yeah,
Completely agree. But there's also recognizing perhaps right now I don't need to, or perhaps right now I can step back a bit
yeah.
and just save that energy and protect yourself a bit later, I guess. But also recognizing it's okay because, as you say, it's a natural thing and it's a self protection. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you come to the understanding of listening to the body or unmasking and being more authentic as something that is helpful?
It was quite a journey. It's not something that, um, in fact, I used to find it incredibly uncomfortable to listen to my body. And like a lot of mindfulness techniques, when I was under the mental health services, they used to try and push them on me, but they hadn't taken kind of my neurodivergence into account. So they're like, close your eyes and focus. And then I just hear everything, the radiators, the electric lights, people chatting in the room next door. And it was completely overwhelming. And painful. And I thought, this is absolutely not what I want to be doing. Get me away from this. This is hideous. And I think a little later on, I started to do a few courses because I love to learn. In fact, that is my kind of weakness. I think it's many people's weaknesses. If they give me a certificate for something, I am in. I will learn it no matter what it is. They did a course at one of my old jobs. They said, anyone want to become a crane driver? I was like, oh. Like, no, Amy, that's not suitable. But
Interesting.
um, but yeah, so I started doing a few courses, and I thought, actually, being present and feeling connected and being in the here and now is really important to well-being. But for me, if I do that without some sort of an anchor, especially earlier on when I found it more difficult, because you get better at things as you practice them. I really needed kind of support to do that in a safe and comfortable way, so it was effective and not something that scared me off the kind of practice that actually could do more harm than good. And that's something I really like working with people on, is kind of how can we adapt kind of some of these kind of mindfulness techniques, kind of mental health things, and make them work for you. Like I it's just it can be very straightforward. It could just be having a fidget that you stress ball or something that you squeeze
Is
as you
that
do
the anchor?
breathing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you've got that hand to kind of focus on as well, which kind of just takes the edge off things and allows you to kind of dip in.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like, you don't have to do like this for like 10 minutes. Just do 30 seconds, see how that goes, and then come out. It could be, you could rock and breathe at the same time. If you want to do a breathing exercise, combine it with that kind of stim and that body movement. There's so many different things that you can do for the right person. I used to do body scans while like blasting angry music in my ears. And, you know, maybe it's not the ideal way to do it, but it's a start and it's getting you comfortable with it. And you can calm it down later. Or if the angry music works, like keep it. Then you're doing the things, you're getting yourself in the here and now. You're taking your brain away from those looping thoughts or that negative self-talk that I used to get stuck in so much. Um, but like if you don't like the kind of very gentle music, then change it, and do what works for you. Maybe later you might find you really love the kind of the typical kind of like meditation kind of music, and you'll be there. But don't do something that you're not ready for straight away. Get yourself there and do what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to go on the journey in baby steps and
Yeah.
experiments, and we can immediately get that feedback of is this helpful or not helpful, rather than forcing ourselves to commit to a long or deep experience. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned the mindfulness and
Yeah.
meditation, and it always, whenever I hear about that, I think about Eastern philosophies and
Mm.
spirituality, and I wonder if if the spiritual side plays any role in your journey.
It's so interesting you say that, because I would have said absolutely not if you'd asked me 5 years ago. I'm like, no, no, no. But as I'm getting older and I think I'm practicing more as well, I'm feeling that
What are
I
you
am more
practicing
interested.
more?
I guess more kind of just kind of like mindfulness or
Mindfulness. Yeah, yeah,
meditation, things like that.
yeah. Uh-huh.
um like if I find myself asking questions and wondering and leaning into that and wanting to know more and feeling like there's something about the kind of I don't know how to put this into words. It's really hard. I think spirituality is always really hard to put into to words.
It is,
but
yeah.
about the
And
connectiveness and the flow of energy that feels like it's got to be more than I gave it credit for earlier, and there has to be something. I don't know what that is. I don't know, whether that's kind of like a set kind of like almost religion or something that I'm leaning towards, or whether it's just more of a way of life almost. Like it's so hard to say,
yeah,
but
I think it's fair to interpret it as both. I mean, it really is a creation of our own beliefs, and whether our own beliefs align with something that already exists or whether we're taking bits and pieces of what exists and fitting
yeah,
them into our experience. In my view, it's just making sense of
yeah,
what, let's say, science has not necessarily made sense of yet. It's like,
yeah,
what is a human beyond the body and mind? What is consciousness? Why are we here? Why did the universe, why is there an existence as opposed to
yeah,
no existence at all? Because we ask ourselves, well, I certainly asked myself, why am I bipolar? Or why am I ADHD? Why did I get
mhm,
these diagnoses? And why am I neurodivergent? And why is
yeah,
there these differences? But that is a question that is within the subset of why is there even existence and perception as
yeah.
opposed to nothing at all? And I think this is where spirituality comes in and fills that gap.
It does, and it's always felt, I think, going back, that something's been missing, and I've been trying to like reason my way through it. And I think now that I'm much more of a feeling person, I think, I've been trying to get out of that kind of ruminating thought place and just feel. And I feel more full since I started doing that, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so what can you say about that journey going going from, 5 years ago you said
Mm,
no way it would be something, and today it is, if I infer correctly, contributing positively,
yeah.
either overall in your life or specifically for mental well-being.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely think it does. It's so hard to explain. There's a certain peace that I have now since I embrace spirituality that um I never really had before. And it's really difficult to put into words, and I'm still learning, so I probably am very ignorant in this kind of world. But and I'm interested in finding that peace, and I find the more I lean into kind of spiritual thinking, connectiveness, touch, kind of, or like my energy almost, I feel closer to that peace. And I don't know quite what my route is yet, or where I'm going to go with that, but it feels really important to follow, and to see where it leads. And yeah, I find it very difficult to put into words, but I feel more complete and more peaceful, and the more I look in that direction. So I'm really interested in keeping looking and seeing where it takes me. But I'm very early into that. I would say probably it's only been really the last year and a half that I've really been like, no, this is something that I really want to kind of focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
that's
probably not
fair. And
terribly
that's
helpful.
no, no, that's actually great because it illustrates that you're in the journey and you're doing the work exactly as you said that you have been doing for the last decade and more. It's the same example of a sensory stimulation of experimenting and being right on that edge of this might be a factor. Let me play with it and see
Yeah.
if it is detrimental or helpful. And you're finding hints that it's helpful and you don't know where it's going to go, but it's going somewhere. And that's the
Mhm.
important part, to experiment and to cultivate that self-awareness leading to more inner peace. Then I'm going to
Yeah.
keep doing it and see where I go. So yeah,
Oh, I love
we
the way you
don't
put
need
that.
yeah, we don't need to have it all figured out.
Mm.
It's about the journey, and it's beautiful to be able to share one of those aspects in which we're in the journey, knowing that it's going somewhere, but without knowing where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
That's really great. I'd love to hear more about how did you get into holistic coaching, and yeah, what you can help people with.
Sure, sure. It's actually quite a random journey. As I said, I had a lot of problems with work earlier on in my career, and I was finding being in that office incredibly overstimulating. And so I actually had a bit of a breakdown. I needed a, I think severe burnout, which took me probably about a year to recover from in very baby steps. But one of the things I started doing during that period of recovery was that I worked as a virtual assistant where I was doing kind of like admin for small companies. And one of those companies was a coaching business. And I was just like, doing their emails, doing a bit of invoicing, nothing really exciting, like a couple of hours a week. Um, and then when I left, they offered me to do their course, and gave me a bit of a discount to kind of as a thank you for the work that I'd done for them. And I thought, oh, okay. And I wasn't. I didn't really know what to think. They weren't particularly holistic related, but that's kind of where I started with coaching. I did this coaching course. I did my ILM level 7 coaching course, and I kind of fell in love with it a little bit. And then I saw like all the algorithm for Facebook and all these like social medias were like throwing all these people's different businesses at me, and I did a random free course about trauma informed coaching, and that got me really interested, and I resonated with that more than any of the kind of I guess support that I'd had previously. And I thought, oh wow, if I'd have known this earlier, how would that have been different? And um and then I started thinking about like the things. I also worked at that point in a crisis center, mental health crisis center. So I was talking to people who were like on bridges and really intent on ending their lives. And I found that yeah, all of that together really got my interest, and I started focusing on kind of mental health and in particular neurodivergent people, because I found that at the crisis center I would say 80 to 90 people that came in were neurodivergent of some flavor, or autistic and ADHD of some, probably more. There were, everyone there was neurodivergent, I'd say, in the broad umbrella term, but um autistic. And I thought obviously the support there is not good enough. And then I started reading into ways that I could support and learning about ways that I could take maybe some of the things that weren't working and hadn't worked for me, but maybe they could have worked if they were just done a little bit differently. And the neurodivergence, the autism was taken, was considered at the time, and it all kind of went from there, really.
Yeah, interesting. We haven't yet really talked that much about trauma, so I'd love to know to what extent you feel that trauma Well, at the very least, trauma awareness and the understanding of trauma, what it is and its impacts, um, is a key factor in the mental well-being journey.
Yeah. At the end of the day, trauma adapts your body. It's the adaptation that your body takes to keep you safe and to protect you. And I think of a lot of behaviors that perhaps are unhelpful now were were designed to protect us. And there's a certain amount of honoring that and being thankful for that. But also whilst recognizing perhaps, you know, that response is not helping us now. So how can we look at that response and maybe um it's interesting because I'm doing a lot of somatic work at the moment, and that's kind of flavoring. I'm training in body processing and another kind of somatic modality, and that's kind of flavoring how I answer that a bit. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not really trained in this. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it too much. And it's just finding a place of safety to kind of release some of the things and feeling safe. Um, I am going off on a tangent, but
Oh
I
no,
am
it's great.
sorry.
Well, let's I'm curious to hear the answer to this. How important is it for someone who might be struggling, doesn't necessarily know what their labels are, or might have some labels but doesn't really know where to go or what to do about it, to learn about trauma?
I it's interesting because my beliefs are changing about this. You know, I think in some ways labels are helpful. They allow you to fast track to maybe strategies that can help you. Um, but also I think we all adapt differently to the different things that have happened to us, and that shapes our existence and our reactions to things, what flares up our nervous system, what doesn't. And I think some of that is finding those triggers, and it doesn't really matter how you adapt, how you react to it, but finding them, recognizing them, and making and helping to kind of neutralize them um, is is where I would go. Listening and learning about yourself, learning what works and what doesn't work, learning what makes you feel safe, and finding that place of peace.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah, so in some ways it's kind of like an assessment as well. It's like, let's explore this thing and see to what extent it might be a factor or influential or helpful. It's just something to investigate as a part of the journey, if I understand
yeah.
correctly.
I think for me, it's the biggest thing that I like to help people with is understanding yourself, understanding your body. I'm not a doctor. I can't like heal things as such, and I can't, and in some ways, like diagnosis doesn't really matter because we can find that. We can look at things that are like well-being strategies and journaling, breath work, things like that. We can look at it and we can look at how it feels for you and what your strengths are, what things are difficult, and how can we make things that are difficult less difficult to help you move forward. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do in life? you know can we get there?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really the power of coaching. And yeah, there's a trend that coaching is on the rise in the latest decades, and I
Mhm.
hope to see more of that. Because it is really super helpful to have a mirror of somebody else reflect back to us and help us make sense of who we are and how to better get to our goals.
Yeah, I think having that accountability and sometimes just saying things out loud really helps with that kind of intention. And I know what I'm like. Sometimes I say I really want to do something and I just, life gets in the way, but then I think, oh gosh, I've got to do it because Amy's going to be asking me about it. Oh my gosh, I better do it. That kind of accountability can really help just
Yeah.
get started because, when you get started and you realize that something is helpful, then you'll want to do it for yourself as opposed to just doing it because I say it might help you or, giving it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. As we get towards the end of this conversation, I'm curious, is there anything that you haven't mentioned yet that you'd love a chance to mention, or a important point that maybe you want to emphasize and really drive home?
I think always my favorite two things to say, three, be kind to yourself, experiment with what works for you, and be kind to yourself. I said be kind to yourself, be kind to yourself. That be kind to yourself, experiment. And I can't remember the third thing I was going to say. So don't worry when things don't go to plan. So we'll go with that.
Yes.
Um, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you've survived every day that you've been through so far, and things do get better. They really, really do get better. And that comes with self-understanding. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's super important to persevere and just keep going no
Mm,
matter, even if there are 1,000 different solutions of different things that can help you and your situation. It doesn't matter if you have to go through 999 and
yeah,
discover that they're not helpful. At least you've done the investigation and you're one step closer to finding out what will work for you.
exactly. I think so many people think, oh, I've tried everything and they've all failed, but they haven't failed. You've learned that like
Yeah.
900 and so many things don't work
Yeah.
for you. And that in itself is useful information. It's not a failure at all.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah, and
step
also I
forward.
think the rates of the amount of new different things that can be tried is
Mm,
greater than the time that people have to generally try things. So I don't think we can actually get to the bottom of trying everything. It's just a question of looking in different places and
yeah,
finding more and more obscure topics and
yeah,
modalities.
yeah. There's something for everyone. There
There is.
is.
Yeah, there really is. Um, yeah, this is why we have these conversations to yeah, to really showcase that there are people in similar situations who have discovered things that work for them, and it is possible.
Yeah, it is. And that's it. Everything that doesn't work, if it doesn't work, it's a step forward because you've learned something new and you've got new information and you know a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, be kind and keep experimenting, keep trying different things. Um, Amy, it's been a really lovely conversation. Your biography and any relevant links will be included in the show notes below. If people want to get in contact with you, what would you um, advise them?
Yeah, just send me an email really. It's Amy at strawhatholistic.co.uk. But I'm sure that you'll pop that up so it's much easier to remember.
Super cool. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. Thank you for sharing your inspiring story and your words of wisdom. Amy, it's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.